On August 15th, 2026, India turns 80. Modi stands at the Red Fort, 7.7% GDP growth behind him. Operation Sindoor fresh in national memory. 15 months ago, these two nations fought a 4-day war. Today, India celebrates. Pakistan is still counting the cost. They were born one day apart, under the same sky, from the same midnight. And yet the planets drew completely different fates for each of them. In this video, we compare India and Pakistan across 6 life domains. We look at career, wealth, power, relationships, legacy, and resilience for both nations through the lens of their birth charts. Every claim traces to a real planetary position in their founding horoscopes. At the end, one chart wins. The result is not what anyone expected. India was born at midnight on August 15th, 1947, the moment the British flag came down and a new nation took its first breath. It is now the world's most populous country, the fastest growing major economy, and a rising military power on the global stage. Pakistan was born one day earlier, at midnight on August 14th, 1947, carved from the same colonial partition that created its neighbor. It is a nuclear-armed state of over 230 million people, strategically vital, internally turbulent, and still defining what it wants to be. India's chart is defined by a massive gathering of planets in one house, 6 bodies clustered together, creating enormous concentration of national energy. This is a chart that pulls inward, building internal strength, but also creating internal pressure. The ascending node sits right on the horizon, giving India a destiny-driven, almost fated quality in how the world sees it. The shadow planet K2 sits in the house of foreign alliances, making those partnerships complex, often disrupted, always on India's own terms. Pakistan's chart opens with Aries rising, the sign of the warrior, the pioneer, the one who acts first and thinks second. Its ruling planet sits in the house of communication and conflict, restless and uncomfortable. 5 planets pile into the 4th house, the house of homeland, the foundation, creating immense focus on internal structure, but also instability at the very root. Jupiter, the planet of expansion and wisdom, sits alone in the house of partnerships, carrying Pakistan's foreign policy almost entirely on its shoulders. The career house, think of it as a nation's professional resume, what it does and how the world rates its performance. The 10th house is that resume. The 9th house is the philosophy behind the work. Together they answer, what is this country actually built to do? India's career house is ruled by Saturn, sitting in that packed Cancer cluster. Pakistan's career house is ruled by Saturn too, but the planet sits in the 4th house, focused entirely inward. 2 nations, same planet in charge, completely different addresses. In the D10 Dashamsha, India's career chart places the sun in the 10th house in a friendly sign. The sun in the 10th house of the career chart is about as direct as it gets. This is a nation that was always meant to lead, to be seen, to matter on the world stage. India's Taurus ascendant gives it a slow, determined builder's quality. It does not sprint, it accumulates. By its 80 year, that accumulation has become undeniable. 7.7% GDP growth, a seat at every major global table. Operation Sindoor watched by the entire world. Pakistan's D10 Dashamsha places Mars in the 10th house in a strong position. Mars in the 10th house of the career chart means The nation's global identity is built around force, military strategy, and confrontation. That is not a criticism, it is a fact written in the founding chart. Pakistan under Field Marshal Asim Munir is more openly military than at any point in its history. The chart always pointed here. India's 10th house receives a direct aspect from Jupiter, sitting in the 6th house of the main chart. Jupiter aspecting the 10th house means institutional wisdom is constantly flowing into India's public work. Its judiciary, its bureaucracy, its democratic structures, however imperfect, have held for 8 decades. India's Ashtakavarga score for the 2nd house, the house of national resources and accumulated value, stands at 44 out of a possible 56. That is one of the strongest scores in the entire chart. The wealth of the nation feeds its career credibility directly. Pakistan's 10th house is flooded with aspects. 5 planets aspect it simultaneously from the 4th house, including Saturn and Venus, both weakened because they are too close to the Sun to function freely. That concentration of aspecting energy on the 10th house should produce a strong career signature. But combust planets cannot deliver their full promise. Pakistan's public institutions have struggled to consolidate. Military coups, judicial crises, imprisoned former prime ministers. This is combust Saturn aspecting the 10th house made visible in real history. The wealth houses in a national chart are like a country's bank statement and credit rating combined. The 2nd house is what the nation owns and earns. The 11th house is what it gains over time: trade surpluses, alliances that pay off, long-term investments. India enters its 80th year as the world's 3rd largest economy in purchasing power terms. Pakistan has just recorded its first fiscal surplus in 2 decades. The charts behind both of these stories are more revealing than any finance minister's speech. India's 2nd house, the house of national wealth, holds Mars, the planet of energy and initiative, in an uncomfortable sign. Mars here is restless, not settled. But that restlessness has driven India's economic ambition across 8 decades. The 2nd house itself scores 44 bindus in the strength chart, the highest score in India's entire horoscope. High bindus mean high potential for accumulation. India's GDP growth of 7.7% in FY 2025 to 26 is not an accident. It is the 2nd house delivering exactly what the chart promised. Pakistan's 2nd house holds Rahu, the ascending shadow node, in an exalted position. Rahu exalted in the wealth house is a double-edged placement. It creates sudden, dramatic wealth events, surges that appear and then destabilize. Pakistan's economic history reads like a Rahu signature. IMF bailouts, brief recoveries, crises, more bailouts. The first fiscal surplus in 20 years is real progress. But Rahu in the wealth house never gives steady compounding growth. It gives episodes. India carries a Dana Yoga, a specific planetary combination for national wealth, but it is rated weak in the chart. Mercury and Saturn form this yoga, both sitting in the 3rd house and both below their minimum required strength in the planetary scorecard. Weak does not mean absent. It means the wealth potential is real but arrives with friction, with delays, with structural bottlenecks. Exactly as India's economy has grown, enormous potential, perpetual infrastructure and governance gaps slowing the full delivery. Pakistan carries a Dana Yoga rated strong, stronger than India's on paper. The Sun, Venus and Saturn connect the 2nd, 5th and 11th houses of wealth. On paper, this is a powerful wealth configuration. But Venus and Saturn are both combust in Pakistan's chart, weakened by proximity to the sun, unable to deliver their full strength. A strong yoga with weakened planets is like a powerful engine in a car with no fuel. Pakistan's Dana Yoga promises more than the economy has ever consistently delivered. For a nation, the relationship house, the seventh house, governs foreign alliances, bilateral treaties, and the partners a country chooses. Think of it as a country's diplomatic dance card. Who does it attract? Who does it repel? Who keeps coming back? India's seventh house has the shadow node Ketu sitting in it at independence. Pakistan's seventh house holds Jupiter. These two placements tell completely different stories about how each nation navigates its most important partnerships. India's seventh house holds Ketu, the south node, in its most powerful, exalted state. Ketu in the seventh house of a national chart means foreign relationships are never straightforward. India has always kept the world at arm's length, non-alignment movement, strategic autonomy, refusing to join formal military blocs. The Indus Waters Treaty suspension, the US relationship warming but never fully committed. This is Ketu in the seventh made real. India wins partnerships on its own terms or not at all. The D9 Navamsha seventh house has Mercury in a neutral state, confirming that diplomacy is calculated, not emotional. Pakistan's seventh house holds Jupiter, the planet of wisdom, expansion, and fortune. Jupiter in the seventh house of foreign relations gives Pakistan genuine diplomatic gifts. It can broker deals others cannot. The April 2026 facilitation of US-Iran talks was pure Jupiter in the seventh. Pakistan stepping into an impossible conversation and making itself indispensable. But Jupiter in Pakistan's chart is below its minimum required strength. The diplomatic gift is real. The follow-through is inconsistent. Pakistan keeps winning diplomatic moments it cannot convert into lasting strategic positions. The Lord of India's seventh house is Mars, sitting in the second house, the house of national resources and values. Mars, ruling foreign relations and sitting in the wealth house, means India's partnerships are fundamentally transactional. Trade, defense contracts, technology transfer. India engages when there is material gain. The Indus Waters Treaty is on hold not as an emotional statement but as economic leverage. This is Mars in the second house operating exactly as designed. Rahu aspects India's seventh house directly from the ascendant, adding an element of destiny. India's global partnerships are part of its larger national purpose. The Lord of Pakistan's seventh house is Venus, sitting in the fourth house, the house of homeland and internal foundations. Venus combust and ruling foreign relations means Pakistan's diplomatic energy collapses inward. Its foreign policy is shaped more by domestic pressures, army priorities, economic crises, political instability than by a coherent external strategy. In the D9 Navamsha, Pakistan's seventh house has an empty field under Aries, with its Lord Mars placed strongly. There is martial instinct in Pakistan's partnerships. Military-to-military relationships are where Pakistan's diplomacy actually works. The civilian diplomatic track keeps getting overwhelmed. Every nation faces crises, wars, economic collapses, political ruptures, existential threats. The eighth house in a national chart is the house of sudden upheaval, hidden dangers, and the capacity to survive them. The sixth house is the house of enemies, conflicts, and daily battles. Think of these two houses as the nation's emergency room record. How often does it end up there? How badly is it hurt when it does? And crucially, does it walk out stronger or weaker? India's 6th house holds Jupiter, the planet of wisdom and institutional strength. Jupiter in the 6th house of enemies is a powerful placement for a nation. It means India not only survives its conflicts but learns from them, expands through them, and uses them to build credibility. Operation Sindoor in May 2025, 9 precision airstrikes on terror camps inside Pakistan, was Jupiter in the 6th delivering its verdict. The Viparita Raj Yoga formed here is one of the strongest yogas in India's chart, specifically because Jupiter occupies this house of difficulty. Obstacles for India generate power. Pakistan's 6th house receives simultaneous aspects from both Mars and Saturn, the 2 most conflict-driven planets in the entire system. Mars aspects the 6th house from the 3rd, pouring raw aggression into an already charged house of enemies. Saturn aspects it from the 4th, adding structural weight, long, grinding conflicts that do not resolve quickly. Pakistan's security threats from TTP militants in the northwest and BLA separatists in Balochistan are Saturn and Mars in the 6th made literal. These are not temporary problems. They are structural, and the chart confirms it. Both nations carry the same rare and powerful formation, all 7 classical planets locked between the 2 shadow nodes, creating what is called Kala Sarpa Yoga. For India, this formation spans the 1st house to the 7th, from national identity to foreign relationships. This is the yoga of extreme destiny, the sense that a nation is gripped by forces larger than its own leadership. India's history of partition trauma, repeated border wars, internal separatist movements, and civilizational weight all carry this signature. But India's Rahu sits in an exalted state at the ascendant, giving it the strength to carry this karmic weight without being crushed by it. Pakistan's Kala Sarpa Yoga spans the 2nd house to the 8th, from national wealth to hidden crises and sudden upheavals. This is a more financially and existentially dangerous axis than India's. The 2nd house is how a nation sustains itself. The 8th house is where sudden destruction lives. Pakistan's economic crises, its recurring IMF dependency, the assassination of leaders, the coup cycles. This is the 2nd to 8th axis of Kala Sarpa Yoga playing out across 79 years. Pakistan's Rahu is exalted too, but it sits in the wealth house, not the ascendant. The strength is present, the stability is not. Every nation's chart runs on planetary periods. Mahadasha, the major planetary period lasting years or decades, and Antardasha, the sub-period within it. Think of them as seasons of national life. Each season has its own weather, its own character. Right now, India and Pakistan are in completely different seasons. And that difference explains everything happening between them in August 2026. India is running its Mars Mahadasha, a major period that lasts until 2032. Mars rules energy, military force, and decisive action. Operation Sindoor happened inside this Mars period. The Indus Waters Treaty suspension happened inside this Mars period. The Red Fort speech on the 81st Independence Day happened inside this Mars period. India's current Rahu sub-period, running until February 2027, adds a layer of dramatic, unexpected assertion. Moves that shock the world are a Rahu signature. After 2027, India enters the Rahu major period from 2032 to 2050, 18 years of global expansion. Pakistan is closing out its Venus Mahadasha, a 20-year period ending in December 2027. Venus in Pakistan's chart is combust and weakened, unable to deliver its full promise. This major period has been defined by internal fracture, economic crisis, political imprisonment, military dominance over civilian life. The Mercury sub-period, ending October 2026, has produced cautious economic recovery and diplomatic maneuvering. From 2027, Pakistan enters its Soon Mahadasha. The sun in Pakistan's chart sits in the 4th house, turning the national focus even more sharply inward. The next 6 years are about Pakistan deciding who it is at its core. Both charts carry the same rare planetary formation. Both have Rahu in an exalted state. Both have planetary clusters that create immense national intensity. The difference is not in raw power, it is in where that power is directed. India wins on power. 8 decades of unbroken democratic elections, however imperfect, represent a structural power that Pakistan's military-dominated system cannot match. Power that cycles through coups is not consolidated power. India wins on career. Its global resume, 7.7% growth, Operation Sindoor, AI leadership, reflects a career house delivering on its founding chart's promise. Pakistan's career is defined by military identity, a narrower and more fragile foundation. India wins on legacy. The Viparita Yoga in India's chart means its greatest obstacles become its greatest achievements. 8 decades of civilizational persistence, from partition to nuclear power to global tech hub, is the chart's legacy written large. India wins on wealth. Its highest scoring house is its wealth house, and the numbers back it up. Pakistan's strong wealth yoga exists on paper, but combust planets cannot deliver. A first fiscal surplus does not close an 80-year gap. Pakistan wins on resilience. A nation that has survived 4 coups, 2 dismemberments, repeated economic collapses, 2 nuclear standoffs, and an active insurgency, and still functions, demonstrates a raw survival instinct India has never had to develop. India wins on relationships. Ketu in the 7th keeps India independent. No permanent alliances, but no permanent vulnerabilities either. Pakistan's Jupiter gifts are real, but short-lived. Brokering US-Iran talks is a moment, not a strategy. 2 charts drawn from the same midnight sky, and yet they have diverged with extraordinary completeness over 80 years. India converts crisis into momentum. Every war, every economic disruption, every political upheaval has been absorbed and then transformed into forward movement. Pakistan carries genuine planetary gifts, especially in diplomacy and resilience, but its foundational chart is structured around internal turbulence rather than outward expansion. 5 domains to 1, India wins this comparison. But Pakistan's planetary season is about to shift, and the nation is not finished writing its chart. The next 2 decades are already written in these charts. A rising India running an 18-year expansion period, and a Pakistan forced by its own planets into a fundamental reckoning with its identity. Whether that produces a confrontation or a convergence, only time will confirm. Drop your answer in the comments. Which of these 2 charts do you find more powerful, and why? And tell us which 2 nations, leaders or rivals you want to see on this channel next.